Thomas was a 32-year-old man living in a small industrial town where factories ran day and night. Every evening at 8 p.m., he reported for duty as a night security guard at a large warehouse. By the time his shift ended at 6 a.m., he was completely exhausted. His salary was barely enough to survive, and he lived alone in a tiny one-room apartment with a broken fan, a flickering light bulb, and an old mattress on the floor. His clothes were worn out, and his shoes had holes in them. Yet poverty was not the hardest part of his life. What hurt the most was the feeling that he was trapped in a future that would never change. Each morning, as Thomas walked home through the quiet streets, he looked through the windows of other people's homes. He saw families eating breakfast together, children preparing for school, and office workers leaving for jobs that seemed to offer stability and purpose. While the rest of the world was beginning a new day, Thomas was returning home to sleep. He often wondered if this would be his life forever. He had applied for better jobs many times, but with only a high school education, every opportunity slipped away. He wanted to learn new skills, yet after working through the night, he was always too exhausted to do anything except sleep. His mother lived alone in the countryside and called him every week. She would gently ask, "Thomas, my son, when will your life get better? I'm getting old, and I want to see you succeed before I leave this world." Thomas always tried to reassure her. "Soon, Mom, I'm working on it." But deep inside, he knew that wasn't true. He wasn't lazy, he worked hard every night, but hard work alone wasn't changing his life. He felt like he was running on a treadmill, giving everything he had while going nowhere. As he lay down to sleep every morning, one thought echoed through his mind. There has to be another way. One cold Tuesday morning in November, just as Thomas finished work, his phone rang. It was his sister. Her voice trembled as she said, "Thomas, you need to come home right away. Mom collapsed. She's in the hospital." His heart sank. Without wasting a moment, he boarded the first bus to his village. The 3-hour journey felt endless. When he arrived at the small clinic, he found his mother lying weak but conscious in a hospital bed. The doctor explained that she had collapsed from exhaustion, stress, and poor nutrition. She needed proper food, medication, and rest, things Thomas could barely afford. Holding his mother's hand, Thomas listened as she whispered, "I don't have much time left, my son. Please don't waste your life the way I wasted mine. Find a way. Promise me." After she drifted off to sleep, Thomas sat beside her for a long time, staring at the hands that had spent decades working in the fields. They reminded him of his own hands, hands that worked every night but never seemed to build a better future. At that moment, something inside him changed. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was determination. Before dawn, Thomas stepped outside the clinic. The village was still asleep, but a few farmers were already making their way to the fields. Birds had begun to sing, and the cool morning air felt refreshing. Looking at the quiet sky, he whispered to himself, "No more. I don't care what it takes. I will find a way to change my life." On the bus ride back to town, Thomas noticed a well-dressed man in his 50s quietly reading a book. He recognized him immediately. It was Mr. Chun, a respected businessman who owned several successful shops in town. Curious, Thomas gathered the courage to speak with him. "Excuse me, sir," he asked, "why are you taking a bus this early in the morning?" Mr. Chun smiled and replied, "Because I wake up at 4:30 every day. I use these early hours to read, think, and plan before the rest of the world wakes up." Thomas explained that he worked night shifts and slept during the day. Mr. Chun listened carefully before saying, "You're awake while the world sleeps, and asleep while the world works. That's one reason you feel stuck." Leaning forward, he continued, 30 years ago, I learned a secret that changed my life. The hours between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. are the most valuable hours of the day. They are when you build the future you want while everyone else is still dreaming. Thomas felt hope rising inside him, but he was confused. How can I do that? I work all night and need sleep. Mr. Chun thought for a moment and replied, adjust your schedule. Sleep as soon as you get home, then wake up earlier in the day. Eventually, when your situation changes, make waking up at 5 a.m. a permanent habit. What matters isn't just waking up early, it's using those quiet hours to build yourself. Before leaving the bus, Mr. Chun wrote his phone number on a small card and handed it to Thomas. If you're serious about changing your life, he said, call me. I'll show you exactly what to do with those morning hours. But only if you're willing to be disciplined. Most people aren't. Thomas looked down at the card in his hand. For the first time in years, he felt as though a door had finally opened. Quietly, he made a promise to himself. Starting tomorrow, everything changes. The very next evening, Thomas gathered the courage to call Mr. Chun. The following day, after adjusting his sleep schedule, he met him at a small cafe. For the first time in years, Thomas was awake during the middle of the day, instead of sleeping through it. Mr. Chun smiled as he saw him arrive. You actually changed your schedule, he said. Most people talk about changing their lives, but very few take the first step. That tells me you're serious. Mr. Chun took out a notebook and drew a simple picture of a house. Imagine your life is like this house, he began. Right now, the walls are weak because the foundation was never built. You spend every hour surviving, but you never spend time improving yourself. The hours between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. are your foundation building hours. 2 focused hours every day become 14 hours every week, 60 hours every month, and more than 700 hours every year. That's like gaining several extra months that most people waste. Thomas stared at the numbers in amazement. He had never looked at time that way before. Mr. Chun continued, your first hour should always be spent building skills that can improve your income. Learn something valuable: Excel, accounting, coding, a new language, or any skill that employers need. The internet gives you access to thousands of free lessons, so there are no excuses. Your second hour should be dedicated to building yourself. Exercise, stretch, walk, read books, think clearly, and plan your day. A stronger body creates a stronger mind, and a stronger mind creates a better future. Then Mr. Chun shared 3 simple rules. First, never negotiate with your alarm clock. Wake up at the same time every day, including weekends. Second, protect your sleep. Success doesn't come from sleeping less. It comes from sleeping at the right time. Third, understand that the first few weeks will be difficult. Your body will resist, your mind will create excuses, and you'll want to quit. Push through those days. After a few weeks, the habit will become easier. After 90 days, it will become part of who you are. Before leaving, Mr. Chun looked Thomas in the eyes and said, I'm giving you one challenge. Follow this routine for 90 days without missing a single day. When you've completed the challenge, come back and show me what you've built. If you've truly committed yourself, I'll help you find a better opportunity. Thomas didn't hesitate. I won't quit, he said with confidence. The next morning, his alarm rang before sunrise. Every part of his body wanted to stay in bed. His muscles ached from working all night, and his mind whispered that 1 extra hour of sleep wouldn't matter. But then he remembered his mother's face in the hospital and the promise he had made. He forced himself out of bed. The first week was miserable. Every morning, Thomas sat at a small table with his phone and watched free online lessons about Microsoft Excel. His eyes felt heavy, and it was difficult to concentrate, but he refused to stop. After an hour of studying, he spent 30 minutes walking through the quiet streets before reading articles about accounting and bookkeeping. When he finally went to sleep later that morning, he was exhausted, yet he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of progress. Day after day, he repeated the routine. There were no shortcuts, no dramatic breakthroughs, and no instant success. There was only discipline. While the rest of the world slept or wasted time, Thomas quietly invested in himself. Every lesson he completed, every page he read, and every morning walk became another small brick in the foundation of the life he wanted to build. Around the 20th day, something unexpected happened. Thomas woke up just before his alarm clock rang. His body had begun to adapt to the new schedule. Learning no longer felt impossible. The Excel formulas that once seemed confusing suddenly started making sense. He earned his first online certificate and immediately enrolled in another course. His morning walks became moments of peace rather than punishment, and with each sunrise, his confidence grew a little stronger. By the end of the second month, Thomas had completed 3 online courses in Excel, bookkeeping, and basic accounting. The knowledge he had gained was no longer just theory, it had become a practical skill. His daily walks had improved his health, he had lost weight, and he felt more energetic than he had in years. His confidence continued to grow, and even his coworkers began to notice the difference. "You seem different these days," one of them said during a night shift. "You look healthier and happier. What's changed?" Thomas smiled and replied, "I'm changing my life, 2 hours at a time." During the 3rd month, he decided it was time to apply what he had learned. The warehouse where he worked still relied on handwritten inventory records, making it difficult to keep track of supplies. Using his new Excel skills, Thomas created a simple digital spreadsheet that organized the warehouse inventory more efficiently. He spent several evenings improving the system before showing it to his supervisor. The supervisor studied the spreadsheet carefully and looked at Thomas with surprise. "This is impressive. Where did you learn to do this?" Thomas answered proudly, "I taught myself. Every day I dedicate my mornings to learning." The supervisor shared Thomas's work with the warehouse manager, who was equally impressed. Before long, the owner of the company heard about the security guard, who had taught himself accounting and created a system that made warehouse operations easier. On the 87th day of his 90-day challenge, Thomas was called into the manager's office. As he walked in, he had no idea what to expect. The manager smiled and said, "Thomas, we're expanding our accounting department. We need someone who understands the warehouse and has bookkeeping skills. You've proven that you're willing to learn and improve yourself. We'd like to offer you the position." Thomas stood speechless. "It comes with a daytime schedule," the manager continued, "and the salary is double what you're earning now." For a moment, Thomas couldn't believe what he was hearing. Just 3 months earlier, he had been a hopeless night security guard who believed his life would never change. Now he was being offered an office job with a brighter future. "When do I start?" he finally asked. "Next Monday," the manager replied with a smile. That evening, Thomas called Mr. Chun. "I did it," he said excitedly. "I completed the 90 days without missing a single morning, and today I was promoted." There was a brief silence before Mr. Chun spoke. "I knew you could do it," he said warmly. "But remember, don't stop waking up early. Your success didn't come from one promotion. It came from becoming a different person." Thomas smiled. "I understand now," he replied. "This isn't just a habit anymore. It's who I am." A year later, Thomas's life looked completely different. He had become the company's lead accountant, earned enough money to move his mother into town, and made sure she received proper medical care. He rented a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment, replaced his old furniture, and finally enjoyed the stability he had dreamed about for so many years. Yet one thing never changed. Every morning at 5 a.m., Thomas still woke up before sunrise. Those quiet hours remained the most valuable part of his day. He used them to learn new software, read business books, plan his future, and continue improving himself. Whenever coworkers asked why he still woke up so early, even after achieving success, Thomas would simply smile and say, "Success isn't a destination, it's a daily practice. Every morning gives you another chance to become better than you were yesterday." Looking back, Thomas realized that the greatest change wasn't his salary, his job title, or the apartment he now lived in. The greatest change was the person he had become. His future had not changed because of luck or talent. It had changed because he made one decision, stayed consistent, and invested in himself every single day. The quiet hours that once seemed ordinary had become the foundation of an entirely new life. Thomas's journey proves a simple but powerful truth. Real change doesn't happen overnight. It happens through small, consistent actions repeated day after day. 3 months earlier, he had no degree, no special connections, no savings, and no clear future. The only thing he changed was how he used his time. Instead of allowing every day to pass exactly like the one before it, he dedicated 2 quiet hours to building a better version of himself. He discovered that success wasn't reserved for the smartest or the luckiest people. It belonged to those who were willing to stay disciplined when nobody was watching. While others were sleeping or wasting time, he was learning new skills, improving his health, and preparing for opportunities that didn't even exist yet. When those opportunities finally appeared, he was ready, because he had already done the work. Thomas often thought about the promise he had made outside the village clinic on that cold November morning. At the time, he had believed he was searching for a miracle, but over time, he realized there was no miracle at all. The secret was consistency. Every lesson he completed, every morning walk, every page he read, and every decision to get out of bed instead of hitting the snooze button slowly transformed his future. His mother was healthier, happier, and proud of the man her son had become. Every time she looked at him, she no longer saw the exhausted young man trapped in a night shift. She saw someone who had taken control of his own life. Thomas knew that giving her a better life was one of the greatest rewards for never giving up. As the years passed, Thomas continued learning. He earned advanced accounting certifications, mastered new software, and eventually became one of the most respected employees in the company. He even began mentoring younger workers who felt trapped, just as he once had. Whenever someone asked him how he had changed his life so completely, his answer was always the same. You don't have to change your entire life in one day. Just change what you do with the first 2 hours of every morning, and let time do the rest. Many people expected success to arrive through one big opportunity, but Thomas had learned that opportunities usually appeared only after months of quiet preparation. The work done in private eventually became visible in public. Every achievement people admired was built on hundreds of ordinary mornings that nobody else ever saw. Looking back, Thomas no longer thought of himself as the poor security guard who once believed his future was hopeless. He saw himself as proof that a single decision, followed by consistent action, could completely redirect a person's life. He understood that the greatest investment anyone could ever make wasn't in money, but in themselves. And so, every morning, long before the rest of the city came to life, Thomas would sit quietly with a cup of coffee, open a book or his laptop, and continue learning. The rising sun reminded him of the promise he had made years ago, that no matter how successful he became, he would never stop growing. Because in the end, success was never about waking up at 5 a.m. The real secret was using that quiet time with purpose, discipline, and consistency. Those early hours didn't magically change Thomas's life. They simply gave him the opportunity to change himself. And once he changed himself, everything else began to change as well.